Hi, my name is Ruta Hailu, and I'm a junior at Grosse Pointe North High School. I'm a social justice fellow through the University of Michigan. Social justice and advocacy have been something I've been really passionate about and therefore interested. I'm specifically interested in exploring the power of language and being more conscious about thinking more critically when using language, especially in describing oppressive systems and oppressive outcomes. By controlling the language, especially in the Western world, it is used to judge the paradigms around events. It makes it easier to control people's ideas and their perspectives of things because colonists are able to teach people what simple concepts like blue and red are, but also complex as justice, democracy, and beauty. They are able to control the language used. The paradigms were given names by colonists who arrived in regions like Africa and did so in order to advance their own interests. We continue to use this language, which makes us liable to having a false consciousness in viewing the world. This is extremely concerning, and it is of utmost importance to understand and recognize how this can affect lives on a micro and macro level. If you know anything about Grosse Pointe, it's a majority white city and has a long history of racism. But one incident occurring on January 24th, 2022 is one I can't forget. Grosse Pointe held one of its monthly board meetings, and at the end, a white woman proceeded to talk during public commentary about her frustrations with her kid being suspended for saying the N word. She proceeded to say the N word herself. It was not until after 15 seconds that anyone on the board said, "Excuse me, ma'am, you can finish, but watch your language." They later said that they condone this language and that in future meetings, people who people would be asked to leave. Only two board members at the end of the meeting commented on this act of racism. The time it took to acknowledge it is outrageous. This lady's reasoning that her son learned this from black relatives and that because he heard it so often, he is somehow allowed to say a word not meant for him and has a history of deeply rooted pain and oppression is extremely concerning. By not directly stating that this language usage is harmful until 2 days after is just another example of which the byproduct of this unwillingness to denounce rhetoric that is harming people. And in my case, attending a school that is 30% black, I feel every negative adjective, even after almost a year of this board meeting. By white media sources naming the social construct in their self-interest, they can further the projects of white supremacy. So, uh, so absolving the perpetrator of the violence takes the blame and the ownership away from them. These black-owned publications told by telling the story the way it should have been and what actually happened in reality. In this article, there is obvious difference in the language they are using to report what is going on. The image on the right is telling the story, the truth, while the ones on the left make it appear that this event still needs to be proven, and it is racist. Not changing this language is harmful to the black students, and these racist white children are further enabled by this. Consequently, other children know now think that this behavior is allowed because they did it, because those kids did it, when this is far from the case, and this lack of ownership dis- dis- dissolves any responsibility from the perpetrator. On an even macro scale, this manifestation of linguistic imperialism can be seen in the medical field as having the ability to be so harmful that it can kill BIPOC patients. This image which I first saw on TikTok by a Black medical student, is a page out of the nursing textbook released in 2015. This page talks about the acute and chronic pain. It uses infactual evidence to stereotypically describe patients based on ethnic background. No white patients were talked about in this, therefore reinforcing that whiteness in our entirety of society is the norm, and white supremacy language can facilitate that discrimination. White supremacy is able to uphold itself by being able to adopt a certain neutrality, and its universality is embedded in the concept that everything other than whiteness is inferior. In this study done in 2016, 40% of first and second year medical students endorsed the belief that black people's skin is thicker than white people's. These beliefs are passed down because of language used in textbooks like this one and many more that further solidify this wrong idea. Medical professionals believe Black people have the higher pain tolerance. They are less likely to prescribe the appropriate course of action, which in some cases may lead to the patient's death. This is extremely saddening to me. These ideas aren't new, and in Njoma Alu's book called Mediocre, she says, a quote, and it says, works according to their design. And this is a very intentional in their execution. And this textbook is another example of that. On both a micro and macro scale, the power of language can be seen, and it's important to recognize that violence in history tends to reappear in different forms. There is so much more nuance to each situation than I had the time to describe, but maybe more important is what we can be doing to address or reduce these harmful outcomes. One of the, one of the first is just being more cognizant of these systems and how they're being upheld, because they are able to be upheld by a lack of consciousness and a lack of these systems, and using this consciousness to stop the spread of disinformation is crucial to creating necessary change. On a larger scale, this could mean changing or moving the specific wording that allows for the continuum of these beliefs. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope that you have learned about the power that words can hold.